Hello, I am Birgit Kaufmann, and I'm from Denmark, where I spent my first 22 years in Odense and in Copenhagen. I'm also mormor to Fiona and Sophie and Sally, and to Reese and Nils and Benjamin and Dalton. And I'm also great aunt to Alexander, Annalise and Ethan, and to Henry and Catherine, and finally to Rachel and Emma, and Jacob and Aiden and Greta. And I dedicate this to you guys, so perhaps someday you will be able to know something about your Danish heritage. Part of your Danish heritage is the Danish meal that consists of open-faced sandwiches. In Danish they're called Smorgabrod, which literally mean either buttered bread, but since there's more on the bread than butter, and smør also means to spread, I prefer to look upon these sandwiches as bread with a spread. They are, to the Danish cuisine, just as Danish as pasta is Italian or rice is Chinese. You can buy them at school cafeterias, at workplaces, and there are specialty shops all over, and in small towns there are even where there might not be a specialty shop, the butcher will make you a sandwich. You can also get them at restaurants, and there are restaurants that specialize in sandwiches, lunch restaurants, and those sandwiches are generally very elaborate. The most famous restaurant in Copenhagen is Ida Davidsen. As you can see on the poster, that several of the sandwiches feature a raw egg yolk. If you got a sandwich like that, you would turn the egg yolk, or the shell, over and spread the yolk on the sandwich like it was a dressing. It is very easy to buy pasteurized whole eggs in Denmark. All the supermarkets carry them, so people are generally not very much afraid of raw egg. These sandwiches from Ida are very expensive. They can run from probably $15, $18 for a simple sandwich like this to $30 for one with a small shrimp. For a Danish lunch, you would generally have, for example, a moderate Danish lunch in your home. You would generally have 4 sandwiches, one with some kind of fish, one with vegetables or salad, one with meat, and one with cheese. So they're actually a very balanced meal. I also want to mention the big festive Danish sandwich meal, which is called the cold table. And that can be served both for lunch or perhaps like an evening affair. And there you would have a first course with a great assortment of fish sandwiches. And then, despite it is called a cold table, it will also be followed by a small hot dish, like a little lamb chop on some kind of puree, but just something tiny. And then you would have platters with salad sandwiches or vegetarian sandwiches or meat sandwiches, and then that would be followed by a cheese course. You seldom have desserts after something like that. It is a meal that takes a lot of preparation, but once it is done, it is actually very informal, and the hostess can enjoy it herself. There's only one thing: it takes a long time to eat, so you have to make sure that people have the time available when they're invited to such a meal, and then also that you preferably would like to invite guests that really like to eat and are not on a diet or something like that. The most important for the sandwiches is the bread, and the standard bread is a very dense rye bread, and it is essentially I would say a sourdough bread, because it is made with a starter. Our local stores have a Lithuanian bread, a pumpernickel, European pumpernickel, that comes from the Lithuanian bakery in Omaha, Nebraska. This is how such a bread look like. Here is a bakery in Chicago that's called Rapslager, and they make also a pumpernickel. It is oval shaped. If you have an Aldi store in your neighborhood, they have imported pumpernickel, which is very much like the Danish pumpernickel, and it comes also already sliced. Theirs is a whole. This particular bread has sunflower seeds in it. And then I bake my own bread, and it looks like so. And it's not too hard. You make a starter of some rye flour and rye kernels and yeast, and let it sit for 24 hours at room temperature. And then you mix all the ingredients, which, among other things, has a whole bottle of stout in it in order to give it a malt flavor. And the dough has the consistency of cement. You just stir it very hard. There's no kneading on anything. So you just stir everything together and let it sit slightly cool, not in a refrigerator, overnight. And then you put it in forms, let it rise a bit, and then bake it. So it is a 3-day process, but there's very little work to do. And it is quite tasty, and it looks like that. A good source of recipes for Danish bread is on the website for the Danish consulate in New York City. And they have recipes for a variety of breads, and they also have recipes for salads and talk about sandwiches too. Another type of bread is a more conventional bread, a light rye bread. There's an ordinary yeast bread, and that many bakeries have, but it is fairly dense. The supermarket breads are generally too soft for making the sandwiches. They're hard to butter, and they are also hard to eat. And I should mention that the sandwiches are always eaten with knife and fork. You don't, perhaps if you are on a picnic, you can balance it, but they are generally meant to be eaten with knife and fork. If you did want to bring your own lunch to work or to school, there exist lunch boxes, and they look like that. And inside you will have partitions for each of the sandwiches. In this case, you could have 6 sandwiches, so they will never touch each other, and they will not be smeared out from each other. If you didn't have a lunchbox, you could use some parchment paper, and this paper has just the right size of the bread, so that you could have several layers of sandwiches without they mingle too much. I will start with buttering some breads. This is about the thickness that you might like to do for a sandwich. For a softer bread, you would have it a little bit thicker, otherwise it will fall apart. The reason why you butter the sandwich is so that you actually protect the bread from anything that you put on it. You know, if you have anything that has any kind of a moisture to it, it will get into the bread and soften it up. By Danish standard, this is probably quite thinly spread, but personally I think this is enough. And then you will make 2 sandwiches out of such a slice. We will start here with sandwiches for the fish course. And the most common fish that you use for the cold table is the herring. And here we'd like to point out there's great differences between Scandinavian herrings and the herrings that you can buy in the American supermarkets. The American supermarket herring is generally pickled according to German, Polish traditions. And they tend to be more sour and perhaps also a little bit harder, and which might also have something to do with the type of herring that it is made from. I have some herrings here from the supermarket, and I will try to find some nice big pieces. And we will make a sandwich of. The traditional accompaniment for such herring would be onion rings or slices of onion, and perhaps a little bit of capers. The Scandinavian herring are generally cured in salt for several months, and then they are marinated. This particular fillet is a mature fillet, which literally means a virgin herring. They are caught before they spawn, so these are from herrings that hasn't spawned, has no eggs in them. Generally, the Scandinavian marinades are sweeter, and they are also fatter, sort of. So this would be a nice piece of herring here, and the only accompaniment for that would be dill. When you make sandwiches, you have in some way to keep in mind that you have the very textured bread, and then you have a topping of something. In the case you have the egg, which is rather bland, you might like to add something that's tasting spicy or salty. Spice it up a little bit with a tomato. Another one is to make a base layer of potato. It sounds so ordinary, but there are some potatoes that actually are quite tasty. This is actually a German butterball that my husband has grown. So we will make another herring. And perhaps on top of that, we will add a little greenery. Now I'm going to make a salad that contains herring pieces. I call it herring for beginners. If you have never tasted herring before, this is probably what you would like. And it is a mayonnaise-based salad, like many Danish salads are. And I suppose this is because if they're too watery, they will destroy the bread. Mayonnaise is flavored with curry. In Denmark, curry is used in a lot of cooking. And I suppose it comes from that Denmark during colonial times had great connection with Thailand. And the Danish East Asiatic Company, they owned teak plantation and mining in Thailand. Actually, my own father managed a tin mine for 2 years for the East Asiatic Company in the 1920s. And because of these teak plantations, this is why teak became the favorite furniture for the modern Danish furniture. So this is a salad that has the flavor of curry and perhaps also a couple of drops of Worcestershire sauce. And then into the salad goes, there's a half cup of mayonnaise, a hard-boiled egg, and some sliced up herring. And for that, I have used the German Polish herring. They're readily available. So I should say that the mature fillets, they have to be bought in specialty shops where there is a large Scandinavian population. I get mine from Andersonville in Chicago. It is never frozen, but it has to be kept cold, so they can only ship it during the winter months. And a store like IKEA has a large selection of herrings from both their own company, and they also has it. IKEA also carry it from a company that's called ABBA, and the ABBA herrings are far, in our opinion, are better tasting than the IKEA brand. The ABBA Fish Company is such a big business in Sweden, and it is actually the ABBA musical group is a play on word on that fish company. This salad is very nicely served on the softer white bread. For these mayonnaise salads, it is often nice to have lettuce under them, so that again that the bread stands up. The last thing I put in the salad was a chopped up chicken breast. So it is a mixture of chicken breast, herring pieces, and chopped egg in a curry flavored mayonnaise. You can perhaps relieve the blandness by sticking a couple of tomatoes on top of it. Okay, herring salad. Another popular fish is, of course, salmon, and particularly cured salmon. This here is a Swedish recipe called gravad. So I'll just make one little sandwich here. We will fold that up so it looks very generous. And there again, you can use an onion. Traditionally, the Swedes eat it with the mustard sauce, which you can also put on it, but I think it looks nice with the onion, and perhaps a tiny bit more dill just to make it look attractive. I will make two sandwiches that you could either make in half sandwiches and use them as regular sandwiches, but by making them in this size here, we can, they will be very suitable as a first course for dinner instead of having soup or salad or something like that. So the first one is based on shrimp, and the other one is based on salmon. Have an oak leaf on it here. For the shrimp, we will have some sliced egg. See, we have just enough yellows here. And then we need a little bit of mayonnaise. The shrimp that I'm using are from Greenland. They are very small and they are very sweet tasting. If you can't get the Greenland, you also can get small shrimp from Thailand frozen in many supermarkets, and they taste just as good. You need to have a generous amount, and then just add a little dab of mayonnaise. Then we need a slice of lemon to squeeze over the whole thing in order to add a little flavor, so I will add a fairly thick one. That probably would make quite a nice first course. There's another sandwich suitable as a first course. This is a salmon sandwich, and we have our cured gravad lax or salmon. And for a topping, we use a nice warm scrambled egg. We could put a little green. In this case, perhaps we would do the cress because there's already a lot of dill on the salmon itself. And then we could perhaps even decorate it a little bit with some black sesame. They are absolutely tasteless, but I think they look attractive. Here we have an assortment of cheese sandwiches. The first one to the left is a Danish Havarti, which is a very mild, fat cheese. And in Denmark, for this type of cheese, you often add jam. And the jam on it is a black currant jam, which has a very strong flavor, so it sort of matches the mildness of the cheese. The center one is a Swiss Emmentaler, which has a tiny bit of bite in it, but with the cress on it, it might bite a little bit more. And the third one is a blue cheese. It's a Saga Blue. It's essentially a brie with a blue vein, so it's very mild, And it is often eaten with some type of fruit, like grapes or, in this case, slices of kiwi. You normally don't have a dessert after the big cold table, but I'm going to make a fruit salad, which my mother always made when we had that kind of meal with guests at home. My mother never ate cheese, so perhaps she thought that there had to be something else. But it's a very nice salad, and my daughters, when they were small, they just loved it. So it is Mormor's fruit salad, but referring to my mother, their Mormor. And it's very simple. You start out with a drained can of fruit salad in heavy syrup, but you make sure that there is not much of the syrup left. And then you just chop up fruit of your own choice to put in it. I don't like to use pears or peaches because there's lots of it in the salad already. And so I like to use some there's more crunchy. Then for a little more of tartness, we will use some orange. Then this morning we used, for the cheese, we added some kiwis, so I still have some kiwis. But essentially you can put in any kind of fruit that you like, as long as you have something that's tart and crunchy and sweet and colorful. And in that category, I think that strawberries, they're really, unless they're in prime season, they tend to be crunchy and somewhat tart too. Put in a couple of fresh grapes. There are canned grapes in this particular salad, but perhaps the fresh one will sort of wake up the canned ones. You put in a little bit of mayonnaise. Of course, the amount depends on the size of the can and the amount of fruit you have put in. And you just coat all the fruit. I don't think it adds much flavor of anything, but it prevents the fruit from sort of watering out. And then we will add whipping cream. It is not sweetened in any way. The final step, and I think this is why my children really liked it, was that we add chocolate to it. And for that, some bittersweet chocolate, and the other brand that I like. I don't like to use chocolate chips, which in some way would be easier, but the chocolate in chocolate chips is not as nice and rich as regular chocolate. But there's something nice about finding a piece of chocolate in your salad. You don't want it to be a chocolate salad, you just want a little bit here and there. You can either put it in a bowl and pass it around, here you are, or we can make individual portions. Strawberry, or we can add a couple of grapes, so it looks like it is very fresh. There you are. A new trend is that people have realized perhaps it's more fun to have more sandwiches than just one or two. So a phenomenon have turned up in the restaurant life that's called smooshy. And it is sort of a contraction of smørrebrød and sushi, and they are just very mini sandwiches. Cucumbers come smooshy size. So, and then I will take a piece of salmon. We will roll it up, and then we'll cut it in two. And then we will put it on top here, and then smoosh it out so it looks like a salmon rolls, if you have some imagination. What I'm doing now is to make an egg pancake like that. And we will just let it sit there until it has solidified, and then I will turn it out on a plate, and then I'll use it to decorate with later on. And this is my egg pancake, sort of roughly like that. And, oh, doesn't that look good? And we will roll that up as a jelly roll. And then we will cut. And then I would put a little horseradish mayonnaise. And then we'll make a sandwich. A double burger. It's a little surprise for the one who bite into it. So what should we put on them? Put a little bit of the horseradish on here. And then we can put the garlic on the other one. Or the black caviar. Some capers on the other one. Right here. Here we are. Aren't they cute? Even the dog thinks they look wonderful. And for that, I think this time I will grate some turnip. You can also grate radish, but turnip has a rather nice, sharp taste. If you were, let's say you're going to a show with some friends and then just have them as a light supper beforehand, or also could have them afterwards. And you could also think about having a reception, a cocktail party and so on, and then have those as part of it. This is actually a 2008 invention in Denmark. Hasn't come on the market before. And the first restaurant that introduced it was called Søren K, after Søren Kierkegaard. And it is a wonderful restaurant located in the Royal Library in Copenhagen, which is a fantastic architectural building. It looked like a diamond that's put on its point, hanging over the harbor. But I think in Denmark you don't have any cultural institution without a wonderful restaurant. If you go to the Museum of Modern Art, the Louisiana Museum with sculpture gardens and so, you can also eat there. So, children, we have come to the end of the show, and I hope you have enjoyed it, and you have seen how we have enjoyed having a lunch with friends, and I hope someday that you will use some of these recipes to have an equal good time with your friends.